Well, hey there, and welcome to Unmistakably You. Thank you for joining me tonight on this very cold winter night here in London, Ontario. I'm Amy, and I am a wedding planner and educator in London. And I am always happy to join you on Wednesday nights to talk about issues that you might be facing in your wedding planning. So if you are popping on for the first time, hi, welcome. If you're newly engaged, congratulations. And if you've been with us for a while, thanks for sticking around and listening to me talk every week. We are in the middle of a series that we have spanned throughout January and February called Setting You Up for Success. And so we've been doing installments about how to find a venue that's amazing for your needs, how to find a photographer and a videographer that you really mesh with, how to book an amazing DJ or band that is going to really set the tone for your party. And this evening, we are here to talk to you about how to book an officiant. So, if you are newly engaged and just starting out on the planning process, we do know that it can be pretty overwhelming and daunting, and we are here to help. We don't want you to be stressed or overwhelmed, which are probably the two words that we hear the most often. So, I encourage you, if you're joining me live, please post a comment, even just to say hi. It's nice to know that I'm not talking to nobody out there. But certainly, if you have a question or a concern or a comment, post it in the chat and I'll answer it here live. And if you're catching us on the replay, again, say hi, post a comment, let us know you came by. And if you have a question, you can, again, pop it in those comments, or you can send me a private message, or you can email me, amy@unmistakably.you.com. We're always happy to help. So let's pop right into talking about your officiant and how to select them. Now, I can't tell you how many times couples have sat on my couch and said, well, we just want the ceremony to be quick. We want to get it over with and get to the party. And I understand that. I absolutely do. I like a good party as much as the next guy. But realistically, your ceremony is the reason for your day. I mean, you are getting married, and that is the legal part of it. That's where the commitment that you're making to each other happens. The other thing to think about is that while, yes, it is your wedding and it is all about you, it's not really all about you. Sometimes there are family members, perhaps grandma needs to have a meaningful ceremony. Maybe parents are really looking forward to that component of the day. So even though you may want to kind of race through it and get a cold one in your hand sooner than later, it is really an important component to a lot of your family members probably, and your guests as well. So I would encourage you to spend a little bit of time thinking about the ceremony and maybe taking it as an opportunity to add some personality to your day. It's going to give you some great photo ops. That's the time that you get to have your first kiss as a married couple. So there are absolutely lots of reasons to focus on the ceremony. And we're not here tonight necessarily to talk about ceremony planning, although I have lots of resources where that's concerned. But just think about the fact that it does carry some weight with a lot of people in your party, in your family, and hopefully you can find an officiant that really resonates with you, that can help you to craft a ceremony that you feel is a solid representation of you as a couple, and that will really kind of mesh with the vibe that you're looking for on your wedding day. You don't spend a lot of time with your officiant, but they are really instrumental in setting that vibe and kind of creating the tone for your wedding day. So it's important that if you have the choice, you do find someone that you feel is going to sort of get you as a couple and reflect that in your ceremony. Now, let's talk about everybody's favorite legalities just for a second. The good old government of Ontario, as we know, likes to make things as difficult as possible for us here in the province. So if you have seen that amazing episode of Friends where Joey gets ordained online so that he can marry Monica and Chandler, that is not the way that it works in Ontario. Unfortunately, the only people who are legally allowed to perform marriages in Ontario are either judges, justices of the peace. Justices of the peace. That's how that should go. I can English. Or some kind of minister. Now, that does have a particular religious connotation. And according to the letter of the law, if you are going to be an officiant in Ontario, you do need to be associated with a congregation of some kind. Now, that certainly doesn't mean that you have to practice or incorporate into your wedding ceremonies all of the tenets of that religion. In most cases, a lot of officiants that you'll find, if you are looking for a secular officiant, despite the fact that they are ordained through a particular congregation or a particular faith, they often will do a completely secular ceremony for you and will not require that or expect that you incorporate any element of any kind of faith into the ceremony. So just know that just because legally you can't get married by anybody but a justice of the peace judge or a minister, it doesn't have to be religious. Now, there is a workaround here. I have had lots of couples in the past who have wanted to have their friends marry them, a la Joey from Friends. And there are certainly ways that you can make that happen. You do, if you want to be legally married anyway, you do have to have a legal ceremony of some kind, but it doesn't mean that it has to be in front of 175 of your closest family and friends. You can get legally married with just the two of you and two witnesses who are of legal age, over the age of 18. So you could go to City Hall and you could get married any day, anytime. Now, City Hall, not that pretty. So if you're looking for a pretty alternative, I'm going to put in a little plug for the studio by Unmistakably You. We actually have some pretty awesome elopement packages that are super affordable and that are way prettier and more personal than City Hall. And you could do that at any point. We actually have a couple who this March are getting ready in the studio. So we have a beautiful open space with tons of mirrors, and it's a great place to have your hair and makeup done with your wedding party, grab some breakfast, have some mimosas on the day of your wedding. So this couple is going to get ready at the studio, and then we're bringing in an officiant that we work with often who's going to do the legal parts of the ceremony before they head off to their actual wedding at their venue, where 6 of their friends are going to perform the ceremony for them. So they've written a really customized ceremony for these friends to read, to deliver their message, and it's going to be really special. They'll have been legally married for a couple hours by that point, but nobody needs to know that. Realistically, the only legal parts of the ceremony that the officiant has to do is that they have to hear some kind of vow or commitment being made. They need to sign the legal documents that will then get mailed to the people in Thunder Bay who process these things, the government department that processes your marriage license and makes sure that you get legally, written down as being married, however that process works. And then the final thing that they have to do is that they have to say, by the power vested in me by the province of Ontario. So that can happen at a completely different time than your ceremony, or it could happen at your ceremony. I've worked with lots of officiants who have just kind of sat in the front row for the duration of the ceremony that's being led by a friend or a family member. And then they just kind of quietly get up, they do the signing, they pronounce the couple quietly at the signing table, and then the rest of the ceremony is done by the friend or family member who isn't necessarily a legal officiant in Ontario. So that's totally an option. So lots of options on your plate, but sometimes you don't have an option if you are getting married in a church. And it really, churches vary wildly. Some of them are much more open and accommodating, and some of them are pretty stringent and fairly strict in their restrictions. So depending on the denomination, you may not have much say in who your officiant is, or you may be able to bring in someone, perhaps a past minister or celebrant that you have worked with in the past that has maybe a personal relationship with you, which I always think is great if you can have someone marry you that maybe you've known forever. Maybe it was your childhood priest or childhood minister. And some churches are more open to that kind of thing than others are. There are certain regulations with certain denominations. For instance, a Catholic priest cannot legally perform a ceremony off-site. It has to be in a Catholic church, whereas a United minister or a Protestant minister of most denominations would be more than happy to marry you in the middle of a forest if that's what you wanted. Some Churches have more flexibility in the parts of the ceremony than others. Some are going to say, we're going to do this, and then this, and then this, and we're going to do this reading, and I will give my homily, and you have no say in anything at all. But depending on the church, you may have the ability to customize in terms of your readings, perhaps, or you might even be able to write your own vows. You, in some cases, can make your own music selections. In many cases, there are certainly churches that have pretty stringent music requirements as well, in terms of not allowing any popular music to be played. But it's always worth asking and clarifying what your church allows. Some churches, some ministers, priests, officiants, celebrants, whatever word you want to use to describe them, some will allow you to have some input into their message, or at the very least, they will sit down and have a chat with you and talk about how you met and your story, and incorporate some personal elements into their message or their sermon, if you will. And some won't. So there are definitely some areas where you may have some flexibility if you're getting married in a church. You may have the opportunity to personalize a little bit, but it really is dependent on the church and their internal regulations. So ask questions, don't assume, and just make sure you get clarification on all of those things. Now, if you're not getting married in a church, you have lots of flexibility. There are a ton of non-denominational organizations or individuals who will perform your service. Now, they, as I said, have to be affiliated with some kind of a faith-based congregation, but they don't necessarily have to be an active member or carry out any kind of regulations from that congregation beyond their basic licensing and their basic sort of code of conduct. But it certainly doesn't mean that they need to incorporate any of their traditions or spiritual traditions or anything like that. So if you are looking for a secular or non-denominational officiant, like with any other vendor, I would absolutely suggest that you start by asking for recommendations, checking their reviews, maybe calling some references, because it's really important that this person has a good reputation and does good work and has been performing weddings that have been successful for other people in the past. I would always suggest that you meet in person. Like I said, you're not going to spend a lot of time on the day with your celebrant or your officiant, but they are very, very instrumental in setting the tone. It's often the first element of the day that most of your guests will attend the ceremony. And so you want to start your day off on the right foot. You want to make sure that the person who performs your wedding is someone that you feel comfortable with, someone who resonates with your core values. So make sure that if you are kind of funny and laid back and chill, you have an officiant who vibes with that. You don't want someone completely straight-laced and deadpan if you're hoping to have a light kind of a sense of levity in your ceremony. And vice versa, if you want someone who's pretty calm and delivers just a straightforward message with very little humor, then that's the kind of person that you want to look for. And when you sit down with them, you'll get a feel for that. You also want to get a feel for how flexible and accommodating they are. How much personalization can you have in your ceremony? Just like with a religious ceremony, there are lots of opportunities where you could potentially personalize. It really depends on the officiant, how much they'll allow that. It's usually a little bit more flexible when you're not getting married in a church, but there are certainly officiants out there who are set in their ways and who prefer to do things in a certain manner and would prefer if you don't sort of monkey with the parts of their ceremony. Whereas there are other officiants out there that will love any input that you have. They are happy to customize every part of their ceremony so that it is a true reflection of you. So get a feel for exactly how much flexibility they have. And then there are some questions that I would certainly recommend asking. With any vendor, always find out what happens if they're sick or unable to attend. You want to make sure that they have some kind of a network that is going to allow for a replacement to come in if for some reason, heaven forbid, they're unable to attend. You probably want to ask what they wear because they will appear in some of those important photos of your wedding day. So make sure that you ask that. Seems silly, but If they show up wearing a dress that's going to completely clash with your wedding party, it's going to show up in your pictures, and your photographer is not going to want to Photoshop that out. So ask that question. Ask how many weddings they do on a day. And if they do multiple weddings, how much time do they allow in between, to ensure that if the ceremony before yours is running late, that they're not late to your ceremony. It's usually not the officiant's fault that they're late. It's because maybe somebody before has been late. Or what happens if you're running late? You don't want to make someone else's wedding late. So think about that. You want to talk about their process for sharing the ceremony before the day. Many officiants are happy to send you the full text of everything that they're going to read. Some prefer to keep certain parts of it secret until the day, so that those words have more power and impact in the actual moment of the ceremony. So talk about that, and also talk about the rehearsal. Many secular officiants don't include the rehearsal in their package in this area. It's something that is usually available as an add-on. So ask about that. Some include it, some don't. As wedding planners, when we do a wedding, that's something that we always include. So we often find that it's not necessary to have the officiant there. We will have touched base with them the week before, so that we can pass on anything that they would like to have highlighted or brought up at the rehearsal. We will walk you through where to stand, when to pass off the flowers, how to sit to sign the license, all of those kinds of things. So often, if you have a planner there, it's not essential to have the officiant at the rehearsal. And to be honest, if you're not having a rehearsal, most officiants that are doing this every weekend are going to be completely comfortable just kind of quietly giving you directions under their breath, so that the crowd, the guests, don't ever notice, but they're going to seamlessly guide you through it. Now, once you've found somebody that you connect with, that you like their vibe, and you've hired them, usually you'll get a meeting or two to kind of get to know each other. Different officiants do this in different ways. Some of them have some forms, information that you can fill out and send to them about how you met, and some fun stories and what you love about each other, so that they can craft a more personal message. Some of them will prefer to do that in person as opposed to via a form. Some officiants have all kinds of resources on their website where you can pick and choose from different texts for each element of your ceremony. They'll tell you what a typical outline of the ceremony looks like, which part typically follows which, and then they'll give you different examples so that you can mix and match and create a ceremony that really is reflective of the two of you. And many officiants are super open to having you come up with your own verbiage or find it somewhere aside from their website. There are lots and lots of resources out there. In fact, it's pretty overwhelming if you just Google, ceremony readings. So the benefit to having a professional officiant is that they can kind of help you narrow the focus and really clarify what each part of the ceremony should entail, and help you to either customize it, or they can provide words that will resonate with you. Now, the bottom line here is that the ceremony really is an important part of the day. I mean, that's my bias, but I think a lot of people would agree. So I do hope that you put some time into selecting an officiant that you truly feel comfortable with. They are helping to legalize and guide you into the next chapter of your lives as a couple. So it is a pretty meaningful moment of the day, and hopefully it's one that you feel it's appropriate to give some weight to, and always, acknowledge the values of your families as well. Maybe it's really important to grandma, and that's why you really give that ceremony some extra thought and some love. Find an officiant who resonates with you and the kind of people that you are. Don't be afraid to ask for customization. There are lots of parts where you can bring in your personality, and chief among those would be the vows. So one more just little plug here. We do have an incredible personal vow writing workshop coming up with Jody from Something New Officiants here in town. So if you're watching this live or very close to real time, on March the 7th, 2023, we have a workshop happening at our studio in Old East. Registration is open, and we are actually, at last count, amount down to only having space for 3 more couples. So if it is something that you're interested in, Jody will walk you through the components of the vows, how to really kind of tap into those feelings that you want to highlight during your vows. She'll help you to focus your words and choose meaningful words. She'll help you to have the character that you want to convey, whether it's funny, whether it's heartfelt, whether it's a blend of the two. And she'll help you to ensure that between you and your partner, your vows carry equal weight and have an equal tone. You don't want one of your vows to be 3 lines long and one of them to be a novel. You don't want one partner to deliver a comedy roast and the other partner to just pour their heart out. So if you're interested in that at all, there are limited spaces remaining. You can go to our website, www.unmistakablyou.com/workshops, and you can register right online. So if you have any questions, as always, about booking your officiant or really about anything wedding related, as you can see, I love to talk weddings, so hit me up and I'm happy to help. I have an amazing team of wonderful, caring planners who also are wedding obsessed and would love to help guide you through the process. So if you are stuck on anything, you have a question, or you even just want to say, hey, guess what I just did that was super cool, give us a call, give us an email. Check us out on Facebook, on Instagram, and you can find our back videos on YouTube as well. So we hope to connect with you soon. Happy planning, enjoy your week, and I'll catch you here next week when we're talking about booking tips for floral and decor. Have a great one. Bye.